We got some new data this morning on the $300 unemployment benefits. They will not be renewed by many states starting on September 1st, which you know. But now we have even more unemployment data from the states that cut off benefits. If you've been watching my show for any length of time, you know that I've been really hitting on this point because immediately once the unemployment data or once the unemployment benefits were set to continue, right, for a few more months, you had so many Republicans who were all over the mainstream media saying, Larry Kudlow and all these other people in the Trump administration saying how this is keeping people from working. By having these unemployment benefits, you're keeping people from going back to work. We need to reopen the economy. You need to go back to your crappy job at Subway. You need to go back there and make, $6 an hour or whatever the hell it is. You need to go back to your McDonald's job and make no money. We need this economy back up and running. And Wall Street needs to make its profits off of selling crappy burgers to people. Sodium-filled crap food that keeps us fat in a perpetual state of obesity in the United States. That's what Wall Street was saying, right? Wall Street was leaning on Congress to make these changes, that you're just lazy. And these unemployment benefits are keeping you lazy, keeping you home, away from these jobs. I called BS on this months ago.
Let them go hungry. That's a powerful motivator, man.
Yeah, Laura Ingraham says, you know what's a powerful motivator? Just let them go hungry.
You think she got that narrative from Wall Street, or where do you think she got that?
Let them go hungry. Food, hunger is a powerful motivator. So we cut off these unemployment benefits, then pretty soon you'll have to go back to work so you can feed me. That's what these clowns have been saying, right? They've been saying it for months. Well, we've been hitting on the data that's been emerging to show that actually it had an adverse effect. It did not add to employment at all. In fact, in the red states where these Republican governors cut off unemployment benefits, even though the federal benefits were there, President Biden had extended them. They were there and available at $300 a month. They were available. And the Republican governors said, get back to work at your crappy job. Shut up and go. You're lazy. Hey, never mind the fact that you might not have childcare to take care of your child because the daycare is closed. And you're going to have to pay for that because out of pocket, even though you only make $15 an hour or $12 an hour, you're going to have to pay $12 an hour to the babysitter. So you're literally working for nothing, unable to put any food on your plate. Just shut up and go back to work. That's what we were hearing from these Republican governors and Wall Street and all of the conservative media and moderate Democrats for that matter.
I mean, the wages that they pay, in a lot of these places, they couldn't even afford to eat at the places they work. They couldn't even afford to buy things from the places they work. You know what I mean?
No, unless they get it to them for free. Like at McDonald's, right. When I worked at McDonald's, I was given like one meal during my shift. I worked the morning shift. I worked there at 5 a.m. to do the breakfast shift, and I was given like a breakfast sandwich. Which, by the way, and if you read today's newsletter, we talked about the top foods that are causing the most obesity and taking years off of your life. And in our News by the Numbers segment this morning, in our newsletter, we covered this. 35, that's the number of minutes of life you lose when you eat just one hot dog. A new study found that sugary drinks, hot dogs, burgers, and breakfast sandwiches were linked with the most minutes of healthy life lost. So thank you, McDonald's. You paid me crappy wages, and I got a crappy breakfast sandwich.
Like here's a 35-minute break on top of your 15-minute food break.
Right.
35-minute break off of your life.
So Dan Price tweeted this. I thought this. So 3 million workers had unemployment benefits cut in red states. Just 4% found jobs. Their net pay gain was $14 a week. $14 a week from going back to work. The overall impact on the economy was negative because suddenly all of those people had no cash to shop at the stores that couldn't find workers. He's pointing to this new data that just came out. Cut off jobless benefits is found to get few back to work. Yeah, few back to work. The cutoff of federal unemployment benefits is in much of the country was meant to bring a flood of workers back to the job market. So far, that flood looks like a trickle. A total of 26 states, and all but one with Republican governors, have moved to end some or all of the expanded unemployment benefits that were in place since the pandemic began. The governors, along with, have argued that the benefits discourage workers returning to work. Several recent studies, however, have concluded that the extra payments have played only a small role in this year's labor shortages. And they found that a modest increase in employment in states that abandoned the programs, most of them in June, even as millions of jobless workers have had to cut spending, potentially hurting local economies. The idea was that there were lots of jobs. It was just that people weren't looking. That's the narrative. Well, that story doesn't hold up. Doesn't hold up. And new data released on Friday by the Labor Department provided the latest evidence. It showed that states that cut the benefits have experienced job growth similar to and perhaps slightly slower than growth in states that retained the benefits. And they saw a 20% reduction in the amount of spending that was in these particular states. So let's get this straight. So if you've got a Republican uncle out there or a Trump-loving whatever freak telling you that the reason that these companies can't find work is because they're too lazy and they're receiving unemployment benefits, the data shows the opposite. And in fact, in the red states where they had these unemployment benefits slashed, these people didn't make any money and they didn't put any money back into the economy, and therefore local economies suffered. Grocery stores, small businesses suffered because people weren't spending. They didn't have any money to spend, so they cut back on their food. And I guess turns out people don't want to go working at these crappy jobs and making no money and being treated like garbage.
Well, one of the problems also is that some of these smaller, these little restaurants that have been going out of business since the pandemic, they're getting hit equally as hard too, because they are spending more on food and stuff, and they're having to increase their prices to the customer and, trying to pay better wages. I know some of them here that try to pay very good wages, but the problem is still, it is not like you're in an area that if I go out to eat to just a burger joint, like there's a place called Stack 57 or something like that, it's about $60 for two people to eat a burger, fries, drink, and stuff like that. And those employees couldn't even afford to do that. And it's in some cases, I do believe that it's not the restaurant's fault, because they don't get enough in profits for, like what they're with everything that's going on to pay that wage. So it's like there has to be some kind of solution that can help the smaller companies too get to where they're like the big companies. Because like, think about Amazon, for instance. Amazon came into the marketplace and they undersold things like for a loss for how long, just to put every bookstore out of business, which they eventually pretty much did. And I think that's what happens with these McDonald's and stuff like that. They can charge $1 for a hamburger to get all these people over, and which takes away from people that could be buying, fresh local food, but they can't afford to sell fresh local food at that level, at that pricing. So it's why people are not eating healthy in this country, because they can't afford to. You're muted.
There's so many, sorry, I was coughing. There's so many problems with this, right? There's so many problems. I mean, we want to unpack this in a couple of different ways. Number one is that in these red states where they are complaining, or they were saying that we can't get these people back to work at these crappy jobs, we're paying these hospitality employees a crappy wage, right? And so we'll just cut off unemployment benefits and it'll send that person back to work at the Best Western cleaning bedrooms, right? We'll pay them a poverty wage, okay? We're Best Western. We make millions of dollars, but we'll pay you a poverty wage to clean our bedrooms and so forth. So they get upset. And then when these people who live in these red states travel to your area or, another blue area that has more expensive hotels and higher, maybe higher end resources, it's because they're actually putting more money into their workers. They're paying their workers more. And people are like, oh my God, I have to pay, it's $150 a night for this hotel room? Really? Yeah, but you know what goes into that payment of that $150 a night? The wages of the people that work there. So they actually get benefits and they're actually paid well. So all of these things roll into this big ball of employment, of wages, like, the experience of the restaurant, the experience of the food, the type of food, the quality of the food.
And nobody's thinking the people that are actually responsible. It is the continued devaluation of the dollar that makes it so that that hotel room has to go up to 150 now to compensate for the people's wages so that they can actually have a livable wage. So that's going to just continue to go up, you know? So it's like we're not pissed off at the right people. We're getting pissed off at the company in some cases, but it all boils down to them getting money for nothing, 0% interest, these big companies, putting these mom and pops, you know, and it's also like, I don't know if you know this, but like the Waldorf Astoria, they lobbied Congress. They wanted a specific sprinkler system to be mandatory in hotels, a complete system. So what they did was they lobbied Congress to get that sprinkler system to be mandated in every hotel chain in the world. And guess what or in the United States. And guess what happened? All of the mom and pops that could not afford to retrofit that sprinkler system out of business. So these big companies do these things. They lobby Congress to get these things done to intentionally get rid of their competition. And that's the thing. Like, this is doing the same thing. These companies, these little mom and pops that have a dream of owning a burger joint can't afford to do it because they can't afford to pay these wages. They can't afford to pay for the food. And so they end up not even being able to do it, which makes the big corporations get even bigger and even bigger and even bigger.
Right. And to this point by this guy, Tom, he says, you know, after 40 years of failed trickle down, can we give trickle up a chance? Yeah. Imagine giving these small businesses the same sort of subsidies and help that we give these big companies on Wall Street. Imagine that little burger place had access to those same 0% interest loans that these big businesses are getting. Imagine the write-offs and benefits that they could be able to get, like Jeff Bezos is able to get, right? Imagine being able to help these small businesses rise up. But you know, small businesses are the gum stuck on the shoe of Washington, right? Unless you're a billionaire corporation, we don't want to talk to you. And yet they'll pay lip service to these small businesses like Small Business Saturday, and we've got to go out and support our small businesses. You know, really, what are you doing, Washington, to support these small businesses?
Well, and listen to the news cycle. How many stories on the mainstream news have you guys heard about 200,000 small businesses going out of business during the pandemic? All you hear is, oh, these lazy people won't go back to work, and these billion-dollar companies, like these billionaires, they're hurting. You know, they're hurting too. These real estate people, they need help. Like, people aren't paying their way. All you hear is how it's affecting the rich. You don't hear about the 200,000 mom and pops that had a dream in this country, the American dream, right? They wanted to live the American dream, so they started this restaurant or they started this business, and by no fault of their own during a pandemic, because they didn't do trickle up, They couldn't get any help. They couldn't get loans. And if they did get a loan, they had to pay it back. There were all kinds of stipulations. It was impossible to get the money. Mitch McConnell's wife got some of the money, but these people couldn't get any of the money. And that's like the biggest problem. It really pisses me off because those are the people that are in the streets with us. Those are the people that are in our neighborhoods that are trying to provide a service for us in our neighborhoods so that we have a great experience, and they can't even do it because Wall Street.
Wall Street. And you look at these other countries that were able to provide stimulus for these small businesses so they didn't go under. You know, New Zealand could do it. Japan could do it. Canada could do it. We can't do it, even though we're the richest country in the world. And we spend billions of dollars every month on war, which we'll get to a little bit more. All of those programs, though, these unemployment benefits programs are set to expire next month unless Congress extends them, which appears unlikely. President Biden on Thursday was asking states with high unemployment rates to use separate special federal funds to continue these programs. But how many of these red states are going to do that, right? You know, as Gina Ray says, George Carlin had it right. Welcome to America, the American dream, folks, because you got to be asleep to believe it. That's right. Drop me a comment below and let me know what you think of this on these unemployment benefits. I want to get to Afghanistan in a second, but first, would you, I have to go have like a cough for a second.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I was going to talk about something anyway.
Okay. So do that, and then I'll be right back.
Yeah. You guys were asking earlier, you know, how, like, what would we have to do to come together? And the thing is, like, we're so divided as a country. We've got people that, you know, on the left that hate the Trump supporters, and on the right they hate the Antifa and the whiny left or whatever. And that feels like it's by design that we're so divided. The only way we're ever going to be able to come together and make something happen is if we actually, you know, I would call it like a purple revolution, where nobody was left, nobody was right. We came to the middle, which is the only way this is ever going to get fixed. And we just like tolerated each other enough to go after we have a common enemy. Our common enemy is the government, but yet they do things to pit us against each other. So we're so far divided that they don't have to worry. They don't have to worry about us uniting. Where the only way we're ever going to be able to fix something is if it was organized to get together. And then the reason I call it a purple revolution, like purple revolution for like 7 or 8 years, like 2 election cycles, purple revolution, where everybody is not left, right. They vote third party or something, but it'll never happen because people are so far divided. People plant a flag. And once that flag is planted, they don't want to pull that flag out because they don't want to be wrong. And that way, if it continues like that, we will never have that happen. Like if you look at other countries, and I love using Scotland and stuff like that as an example, if something pisses them off, they will take a tractor full of manure and go and spray it all over, the Congress building. Like those people don't take it. And you can see in other countries, they unite behind things like that together. And when they're united, they generally win. Look at the education thing. What was it? China, when they came together and they were going to change the education system, and they were like, no, you're not. And they didn't because they couldn't, because so many people protested. So that's the only way anything's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Iceland, what they did. I mean, after the corruption, after
the
the
bankers
financial
went to
crisis.
jail and they wrote a new constitution. Like, could you imagine in this country if somebody proposed writing a new constitution? That person would be Jeffrey Epstein level conspiracy crazy.
Yeah. Oh, you mean these people that were involved in this financial crisis? Yes, they should go to prison. And by the way, we should rewrite our constitution because it wasn't serving the people, and it'll never happen again. But in the United States, what did we do? No one went to prison, and we were basically back doing the exact same things with Wall Street. Yep. Credit default swaps. Yep, they're back. The same thing that got us into the 2008 collapse is back again, and these banks can trade in crappy mortgage-backed securities once again.
Our government is regulated by a document that was written in the 1700s. Do you think things are different now? Like the only reason we have Congress and Senate is because we needed representation because there were farmers living out in the middle of nowhere that couldn't go to Washington and represent themselves. We can represent ourselves online now. We don't need them people.
Well, some of our leaders were alive back then.
Come on, man.
Sorry, Joe. Low blow, Joe. Low blow.
Low blow.
By the way, who the hell cares? Who the hell cares which president is there in these puppets that are just propped up anyway? I mean, whether it's Joe Biden that's in office or whether it's Trump that's in office or it's Obama or Bush, they're all just puppets of the military-industrial corporate complex anyway. That's all they are.
Nothing will fundamentally change. How many of them say it?
Right. That's why Bernie Sanders never gets elected president of the United States unless there's like a revolution that happens. Right. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. We'll see. No,
because they've got us so convinced that a third party could never win. Like if you look at the little guy,
Vern Troyer?
No, the guy that ran for president with Bush and
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot. Like that dude got 19. Like he's probably the closest one ever being third party. And then there was the Green Party, Ralph Nader. Like Ralph Nader got very close, like the thing is like they've got us convinced that a third party can't win. But if we pushed a third party hard enough, they would have no choice. But the thing is, we're so convinced that can't happen that we choose the lesser of two evils. And the problem is the lesser of two evils are exactly the same. The same.
Sadly.
Thanks
for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.